I used to have 2 speech impediments and learning disabilities, and my classmates would tell me to kill myself every day. And so I just kept it to myself until a girl that I had never met dressed up as me for Halloween, posted it online, and it went viral in our community, and I was getting death threats. But then along the way, I would meet people. I'd meet the Holocaust survivors that went through things that were so much harder. I just realized that every single one of those people made the choice of life.
Whatever darkness that you're in, when you come from a place of service and help other people, it's taking you out of your own darkness. Okay, Aija, I want to tell you, I've met a lot of people throughout my career. I obviously always online, like look for people. But when I found your account, there was something about you that I can't explain it. Like, first of all, I feel like I've known you before, but you also like a representation of just like such a beautiful energy.
Thank you.
So when we connected online,
thank you.
yes, I had to tell it to you. I was like, it might sound creepy, but that's where it's at.
Thank you. I mean, I had been a fan of yours for a few years, and so I was like kind of fangirling when you messaged me, and was like very excited. To get to chat with you today.
Okay, amazing. So just for people that don't know about you and your accomplishments, because you are quite an extraordinary young woman.
So I've had like a very unique career. So I wrote my first book when I was in high school because I dealt with really bad bullying for 8 years of my life. I used to have 2 speech impediments and learning disabilities, and I would come to school every day for 8 years, and my classmates would tell me to kill myself every day.
Oh my God.
And around that time, there were a lot of stories in the news about young people who were being bullied and some that took their life. And I wanted to do something about it. So I decided to write a book in high school. And I had no connections to publish this book. So I self-published it as this like little ebook online. I made it $4. And to my surprise, it was acquired by Scholastic, and it became an international bestseller when I was 19. And so then I began speaking all over the US, and I would perform poetry at my different tour stops. And it was so much fun, and I fell in love with performing poetry. So I decided to write a second book called Dear Girl that was all poetry for more kind of adult women. And then I wrote a TV show, and I started posting on social media and creating content. And so it's just evolved in all of these directions.
No, it's amazing. But, with speaking of bullying, because when you explain it like that, it sounds very simple, but if you think about it, a teen that comes from a background of like you've been bullied for all your kind of school career to all of a sudden find the confidence to write a book and self-publish, that's kind of unheard of, if I'm being honest. So I want to know about your childhood. Like, what was your home environment?
So I was born in New York, and I lived there till I was 12. And that is where the bullying took place. I have incredible parents and an amazing brother, and I had a really beautiful home. But when I went to school, it was really bad. Like, I just went to a school where people were mean. And then it continued online with social media.
Did you involve your parents in that? Like, how aware were they?
I didn't tell them for years, which is like a really big regret I have. When you're going through that and you're at that age, you feel like if you tell adults, it will just make it worse. And so I just kept it to myself until it just got worse and worse, to the point where a girl that I had never met dressed up as me for Halloween, insane, posted it online, and it went viral in our community, and I was getting death threats. And that's when I decided to tell my parents.
First of all, it sounds like a movie. I didn't think that these kind of cases actually exist.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know much about bullying. Maybe when I was back in high school, it's just, I don't know, maybe it was also in Israel. Like, it wasn't as prominent.
It wasn't as common.
I've never heard like to that extent. Did you find that like writing the book, you kind of found an outlet of how you can?
Exactly. I always say, I think writing my book saved my life, because I didn't tell anyone for years what I was going through, and so I suffered with my mental health because of it. But I would write as this escape, because I was bullied for the way I spoke. I had a stutter and a lisp. And so I found my voice through writing, and it was like my safe place. And then it just wound up turning into a book. But for me, it was just the way that I was able to process what I had dealt with.
Okay, so you wrote the book. When you started, you didn't plan to publish it. At what point you're like, I need to put it out into the world? And weren't you scared, because then you're exposing yourself even further?
I was, but for me, the moment that everything changed, I saw a story about a 16-year-old boy that took his life because of bullying. And he looked like the most popular kid in the school. And I looked at his picture and I was like, if he felt that hopeless, imagine all of the people all over the world that are experiencing this and they feel like they're the only one. In that moment, I decided I need to find a way to get this book out there to hopefully save one person from making a decision that they can never reverse. And actually, the first country to reach out to me was not the US, it was Russia. And my book
Really?
is published in Russian.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, did you expect the success of the book? Like, did you expect it to be picked up like that?
I wanted it to be, but I had no connections. And like I would cold call and like cold email all these publishers for years and no one would respond. But I knew there was a market for it because there were no books that were written by a teenager for other teenagers about bullying.
Did you ever meet anyone that opened up to you about like how the book helped them?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I spoke for 5 years all over the country about my book and bullying. I spoke to about over 4 million people at stadiums,
Wow.
at schools, at conferences
In the US.
in the US.
Wow.
And yeah, I got so many incredible responses to this day from young people. So I feel like it did what it was supposed to do.
I love how, sometimes when we look back at our younger selves, like the fact that you did what you did, because I am truly in awe, like someone that comes from a place of being heard and put down. And it takes a lot of courage and a lot of self-generating confidence to do something like that, to create something for other people. So I'm sure that you're looking back at the 16-year-old Aija being like, oh my God, this was...
It feels like a different person, but I'm sure you relate to that too, because like now you have millions of people that follow you and watch you. And I'm sure that it's crazy to look at your younger self.
100%. I'm thinking back to the days when I first started with social media, because social media was a very scary thing for me. And I actually picked it up not from a place of like, oh, this can be a business or a career, because I just didn't know. At that point, I had 2 little boys. The last thing I was watching is social media. But I was looking for a way to, first of all, break through my own limiting beliefs, because I just never felt like I have the courage to be fully seen. I was very insecure and didn't want people to judge me, which is ironic because I was modeling for a decade.
I know. I was gonna say, like, I look at you and I can never imagine that you would be insecure about anything.
Thank you. Yeah, no, there was a lot of insecurity. It was like the gray mouse syndrome, It's like, so I came from not a place of of like bullying, but I came from a place of like, as long as I'm invisible, no one can hurt me type of thing,
Yes.
So at some point when I already had 2 little kids, I was just like, okay, it's now or never. Like I have to break through this because I don't want to model that to my kids.
Wow.
So social media was a very interesting kind of playground to push myself into, so I can truly like one by one break through, because you have to show up, you have to speak, you have to like, you have to be you.
So social media was really the thing that made you confront those kind of inner struggles.
Exactly.
Wow, you
I know.
jumped in the deep end.
I truly, in a very Eastern European manner, But in a way, writing became that for you. You writing that book,
yeah.
was that for you, no?
It was, but I would argue that you did something much scarier, because I wrote the written word in a book that people would read and I wouldn't have to face them. But by you putting yourself out there to millions of people, I mean, that must have been very hard in the beginning when people would say things that maybe weren't nice or...
It was hard, but I had Gary, who's obviously been an amazing supporter. So you also you got your MBA from Columbia.
I did, yes.
Which is very interesting to me, because I always wonder, for someone as creative as you, so you write poetry, you wrote 2 books, how does that kind of education come into like a creative, flow?
Thank you for asking about that. This is the first time someone has asked about my MBA.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, for me, it feels like it kind of cancels each other, because when I'm in my creative, because I mean, MBA, you have a business degree, you get so analytic and like pragmatic.
Yes.
And then you're also supposed to be this like open-minded, flowing, creative person. How does that work?
You're so right. So the MBA was an interesting decision, and it was, I would say, probably one of the best decisions I've ever made. But what happened was, my dream at the time, before I got my MBA, was to be a writer, showrunner. And I wrote a TV show and I sold it. And I
Wait,
was
what
like,
TV show? Do we know?
well, it's not out. So this is part of the story. It's part I'll tell you.
TBD.
And it was my dream, and I sold it, and I was 26 years old, and I was like, wow, I just sold a TV show. And then I realized that in Hollywood, you can sell a TV show and get paid and be working on it, and it never can manifest, and it can like actually never come out. And that's just very common because 99% of shows that are bought don't get made. And I've always been very impact oriented, as it sounds like you are as well. And so I thought, I cannot live the rest of my life creating things that are never seen in the world. Like, I don't see the point of that. It doesn't matter how much money you get paid. I thought, okay, I want to do something impact oriented, but right now I'm just looked at as a creative. And when I go in these rooms, they just see me as a creative, even though I've always approached myself and my career from a business perspective. So I decided to study for the GMAT and go to business school. And my parents looked at me like I was insane because I didn't even want to go to undergrad.
Right.
And so I found the only 16-month expedited program at an Ivy League school, which was Columbia. And I went, and it changed my life because, talk about jumping in the deep end. I showed up the first day of class with a bunch of like finance bros and finance women, and I had not taken math since I was 15 years old. I had never used Excel in my life, and I felt like the biggest fraud. But I learned it, and it was really hard. And I came out of that with a whole other skill set and a whole other developed part of my brain. And it's just been like the best decision ever.
So you feel like, I guess even the way you show up as a creative just feels more empowered because you know how to navigate that
Exactly.
in a business setting. Yeah.
So like, you know, when I'm with my accountant, I know exactly how a P&L works because I've built them in business school. Or I wound up working at a venture capital fund while I was in school because I wanted to.
Excuse me, when?
While I was in school, my last 7 months or so, I had never had a real job. I'd always, you know, not a real job. This is a real job, but I never had an office job, and I wanted to experience it. I decided to work at a venture capital fund, and I loved it. And I also realized that it's not what I wanted to do after I graduated, but I just felt like I left that experience showing up in meetings as a more well-rounded person, but also feeling more confident in myself.
So, you know, I feel like I always hear this advice of like, okay, focus on your strengths, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, you're a creative, like be a creative. But I love that you really went into becoming this well-rounded, and you do feel like it benefited you as a person.
Totally.
I want to know what your parents, how they raised you, because the kind of drive and motivation that you have, like these are a lot of actionable kind of decisions that you made. Like even when you decided to pick up, you know, with the MBA because you felt like you could be a better creative if you knew business, or while at school you decided I'm going to go and work for a venture capitalist. Like, where does this drive come from? Okay, guys, let's take a pause and talk about today's sponsor, Puri. I'm sure we all know at this point how important it is to make mindful choices about the products we use every day. And when it comes to protein powders, I want something that not only supports my health, but also aligns with my commitment to wellness and transparency. That's why I was excited when I discovered Puri. So the exciting part about Puri is that it's the only protein brand in the US that has earned the Clean Label Project Transparency certification, which is making it the gold standard in the industry when it comes to safety and purity. I feel like there's so much information out there, and there's a lot of ingredients we no longer want to be in our foods. So making sure that I see the ingredients that are actually in my products is extremely important. I can feel good about knowing that Puri's PW1 whey protein is both high quality and third-party tested for purity, something that's not always easy to find. The brand is truly built around the idea of testing and transparency because each batch is third-party tested by the Clean Label Project, and they test against more than 200 harmful contaminants, including lead and cadmium. On every one of their products, you will find a QR code that you can scan, and you see your exact batch test results. So you actually see exactly what you're putting into your body. Their PW1 whey protein packs 21 grams of minimally processed whey from pasture-raised cows, no hormones, no GMOs, no pesticides, just pure natural protein that you can feel good about. My go-to flavor is vanilla. I make it in smoothies, I mix it in my yogurt, you can even bake with it. Get creative. You need a clean and trustworthy protein powder. PW1 is the one. Don't wait, make the switch today. I have an exciting deal for you if you want to take advantage. Right now, you get 20% off, or if you choose their already discounted subscription, you get almost a third off the price. So visit my exclusive URL, puri.com/Valeria, and use my promo code Valeria. That's PUORI.com/Valeria. And just so you know, that discount is only available when you visit my exclusive URL and use my promo code, so don't wait.
The thing my parents always taught me growing up was to think about my ancestors and the lack of opportunities they had and the distance they were able to go with what they had. And particularly with business school, I was inspired because I had a grandmother named Marjorie who I never met. She died before I was born, but she never got to go to college. I don't even know if she finished high school. And she wound up building a very successful business on her own without any education. And she would have dreamed to go to a business school, never had the opportunity. And so I became the first woman in my family to be able to go to business school. And I only was able to do that because of the hard work and sacrifices she made. And so I think throughout my life, I've always thought like it took people that I've never met moving mountains to get here, which I'm sure you feel all the time too. I feel like a lot of, Jewish Americans, Jewish Israelis, Canadians, wherever you're from, like there is this very rich and complicated history that we often don't think of. And I try to live with that when I make decisions about what I want to do and achieve.
I'm going to simplify it and call it guilt.
Yes, Jewish guilt, 100%.
Because there is no better motivation than a Jewish guilt. And I'm sure, and I know that it exists in a lot of other cultures.
Totally.
Every immigrant child can totally attest to it. I agree. How do you balance that? Because, I reached this point in my life where I agree that a lot of the fire in me is the result of thinking back to what my ancestors, what previous generation had to go through in order for me to be here. Even my mother, right? Like I'm just thinking about her 3 immigrations and being a single mother with like a 2-year-old in a new country without money. Like I always think about it. And it does come with this sense of, you owe them absolute excellence. And in a way, you also operate from a place of survival. And I reached this point in my life, I think it happened last year, where it hit me, where I'm just like, this doesn't serve me anymore. Like I need to find motivation that honors all of that history, but doesn't come from a place of survival, but rather thriving, right? I don't want to survive anymore. Have you ever felt this?
I think for me, because it's a bit removed, because it was my grandparents, not my parents, there is a little bit of that distance. So I think I'm lucky in that because I hear it through my father's mouth, but not through someone that actually moved here and had all of these sacrifices. So I think that gives me that space to definitely sometimes feel that guilt, but mostly to just feel like, okay, I want to use my life to do something good and impactful and use every gift I've been given to make the most of it. So I think I'm a little bit,
okay, so my kids will have a little bit less trauma.
Exactly.
Than me. Okay, great.
I think so. But also, usually that means less of the fire, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. I always think about, that's why I asked about your parents and what they did with you, because I always think about my kids, right? They are being raised in such a privileged environment and circumstances. Even the fact that both Gary and I speak English, I had to, and again, a very similar experience to every immigrant child where I had to translate everything to my mom. I had to go with my mom to the bank. I had to do everything with them. So you grow up very fast and very different. My kids don't even have to deal with that.
Yeah.
So I always think about how do I get them to be, motivated and truly want to have that hunger, from a place of abundance.
Yeah. It's definitely possible. My parents succeeded with it, with me and my brother.
I need your mom's phone number.
I'll give it to you.
I'm going to be giving her a call.
But I'm sure it's a lot harder. I think my mom was very strict.
Oh, okay, interesting.
I was raised super strict. And I was weird compared to my classmates because I wasn't allowed to really have sleepovers or go to parties. So it was not fun.
It was not fun.
It was not fun, but I'm grateful to them.
Was it a shock for you when you kind of became an adult and you had to make your own rules? Because that's something also that's so interesting. I started thinking about it recently where we're putting so many rules on the kids, but at some point they leave the house and it's not surprising that so many of them have identity crisis because it's well, now no one tells us what to do. What do we do? How do we adult?
That's a really good question. I haven't thought about that. It wasn't hard for me to make the right decisions, even if there were so many to make, because my parents did a very good job reminding me of the values that I should strive for and the life that I should want to have. And they would say, like, these are the decisions that if you make them, you're not going to get that.
Yeah.
And these are the ones where you will get that, but it's your choice and it's your life. And I
Okay.
think that really helped me because it was like I was not being told that I can't do this, but I was being reminded of like, if I want this, I got to do this.
Right. Do you feel like faith has been a big, because it feels to me like the Jewish aspect is really big with you.
Yeah.
And I find that people that are big into religion and faith in general, it grounds them in a way.
Interesting. Yeah.
Have you ever thought about it? Like, do you feel like that's one of the reasons why you just kind of knew your path and where you want to go?
Well, I actually was not very connected to my identity until about 4 years ago.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So you didn't grow up in like in a
No,
religious or traditional.
I grew up in a completely secular home. I had a bat mitzvah, but we never did Shabbat. We
Mm,
never really went to synagogue. My dad was raised modern Orthodox, but he kind of ran away from it.
right.
And my mom was not raised religious. So even though they're both Jewish, it took me like 25, 26 years of my life to get to a point where I connected deeply with it.
What made you
So,
connect or want to connect?
yeah, I think, and I'm really curious to ask about your journey as well about this. I think I grew up in a lot of circles where there was a lot of very normalized anti Semitism,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't speak up for myself and I didn't speak up for Jews. Then I started to question, I think closer to around COVID time. There was like a lot of anti Semitism in the news, there was a shooting, there was, things happening in the
Mm-hmm.
US. And I started to question why I was afraid to speak up or why, when I did say things to friends, I was told that anti Semitism wasn't real, but I was seeing it happen around. As things got worse and worse, just much more normalized anti Semitism, I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, I have a problem. I don't like telling people I'm Jewish and I'm not posting about it on social media. No one knows I'm Jewish on social media. I need to figure out what is wrong with me. And I
Mm-hmm.
began to do a lot of research on Jewish history, on my own identity, on anti Semitism. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to start bringing Shabbat dinner to Holocaust survivors who live below the poverty line in Brooklyn every week. And I'm going to listen to them. I'm just going to sit and listen. And I did that for 3 years. And that changed the rest of my life.
Oh my God. I can only imagine what that type of experience leaves you with.
It was the best education I could ever ask for. And it was obviously heartbreaking and horrific. But I also learned that when people survive things like that, it is all about choice. There's this amazing book by Edith Edgar.
Ugh, I love it. The choice.
Yeah.
So, so good.
And that's what I just learned over and over from all these survivors is they made the choice. When they were liberated, they made the choice to live and to rebuild and to become who they are. And they wouldn't be alive without that.
So that brought you closer to your Jewish identity.
Yes.
And you became very openly Jewish. Was it a bumpy ride for you when you kind of started talking more
So
about it?
what I did was after about 3 years of bringing Shabbat dinner to these survivors, I started posting their stories on social media because they wanted to share their story. They had no platform and I had hundreds of thousands of followers.
Okay, so before, because I want to
Yeah.
understand, so you were already on social media.
Yes.
What were you posting? Like the poetry, those
Yeah.
things?
I was posting poetry, stuff from my book, stuff from my speaking, but nothing about my identity at all.
Okay, so your kind of the story and the Jewish came through the stories of the Holocaust survivor.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I just started sharing their stories. And I started seeing that I had a lot of people follow me that had never met a Jewish person or didn't really have any education on the Holocaust. And they were seeing it through a different light. I also never said in the videos that I was Jewish. I was just trying to be a messenger. And I intentionally didn't say I was Jewish because I wanted people to not make assumptions based on the storyteller. And those videos went viral. And then October 7th happened. And I decided that I wanted to do another series, which was I grew up thinking that all Jews were Ashkenazi.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know that there were Jews in Africa, in the Middle East, in North Africa, in Asia, all these places. So I decided to go around the world and start making videos on Jewish communities in all parts of the world, Arab Jews, Asian Jews, everywhere. And that is the second part of kind of my journey, being able to really have deep pride and connection to my identity.
You know what's so beautiful when you speak of all the things that you picked up throughout the years and the books and the poems and everything, it really shows me that your job here is like to be a vessel. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? So it's not necessarily that you need the author or
Yeah.
it's truly like you're a vessel.
Wow. Thank
And
you.
I love that you following these callings to share and to speak, even if they're necessarily not maybe connected to one another, because I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of people would stop themselves of going into these multiple directions. It's like, okay, I'm an author now and I write
Yeah.
books, the end.
Yeah.
And the fact that you give yourself this freedom to go into what feels right to you at that moment,
Hmm.
that's a gift.
Thank
Yeah,
you. Thank
it
you.
really is. For me, with the Jewish
Yeah, I want to
identity, it's
hear.
very interesting because I moved to Israel. I was 3 years old. I grew up there. I never thought about it. For me in Israel, I was a Russian in
Yes.
Israel, So I didn't have to work really hard to keep any tradition. We didn't do Shabbat, we didn't do anything, but
Right.
it was all around me. I live in a country
Yeah.
where, the majority are Jews. So
Right.
I would go to Shabbat dinners of my friends and we would still have like Novi God, like a Christmas, the Russian tradition. We would do all these things and I didn't think about it twice. I was like, yeah, I'm Jewish. And when I moved to North America
Mm.
is when I felt like, okay, I really don't know what this means. Like, what does Jewish mean?
And
Um,
you were like 18 at the time?
I was 19 years old.
Okay.
I remember I went to a synagogue in Toronto, in Canada. That's where I moved to. And it was a female rabbi. I haven't even seen that ever in my life.
Wow.
I don't know if that existed. I'm sure it does, maybe in
Yeah.
Israel. That's to that
Yeah.
extent, I had no idea about what's out there. So at that point, once I came to North America, is that when I started asking questions, what does it mean? What does it mean to me? How do I show up? Like, do I care to connect?
Wow.
And I didn't for a while.
Yeah.
I think having kids brought me closer to it because I
Mm.
do think that having faith and spirituality in general in your life is very important.
Yeah.
It's important for the kids. That's kind of how I found my way to it. And with social media, it's interesting because we spoke a little earlier about how we kind of found our voices within the
Right.
chaos. And speaking about, being openly Jewish, it's the same thing happened to me with October 7th, where I was just like, I didn't realize how badly people needed people with platforms like myself to stand up and be like, I'm Jewish and I'm proud
Yes.
of being
Yes.
Jewish. Like, I didn't realize how
Yeah.
bad.
And people didn't know you were Jewish, right? Like,
No,
not that
I
you hid
spoke
it,
here
but
and there that I
okay.
was like from Israel and here and there.
Yeah.
But again, for me, I always wanted to I didn't want any division happening in my,
Yeah.
with my audience because
Yeah.
that's not who I am.
Totally.
I love all cultures or religions. Like
Yeah.
I absorb everything.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to come out with these statements and alienate somebody. And but at some point I was just like, that is me. That is part of my
Yeah.
story. Why am I hiding it?
Yeah.
So it was a very interesting journey. I'm still on that journey. I'm still trying to find my way
Sure.
in the way I speak about it and showcase it, especially these days because I feel like it gets
So complicated.
complicated with everything. It's very interesting how people with faith, you kind of find yourself at different points in your life being like, how where does this
Yeah.
connect to me and does it connect to me?
And do you find that faith in the religious part, in the cultural part, in the traditions?
I love the traditions.
Yeah.
The values is something that I love. And I can only speak obviously about Judaism, but in Judaism, just like the values of, choosing life over anything. And
Yes.
everything is about like life and
Yeah.
happiness. And yesterday we went with my mother. I took her to this beautiful concert of these two girls. They sing in Yiddish, which is like a dying language.
Wow.
Amazing. And you're sitting and you're listening to all these songs and you're
Mm.
like, oh my God, what a heavy, dark, painful history
Yeah.
the Jewish people carry with
Yeah.
them. And despite that, to come from a place and to choose light and love, like that to me is so powerful.
Yeah.
So that's what I connect to the most.
Totally.
When we have Shabbat dinners and we do the prayers and stuff, we don't do them properly. I know it, but I'm like, that's not the point.
It's not exactly.
The point is the energy. The point is us coming
Exactly.
together.
Exactly.
With poetry, it's a very unique form of expression.
Yes.
Something that I like, if you ask me, and at this point I'm a confident person, but if you ask me to go on stage and do spoken poetry, I wouldn't know what to do with myself. Like, that's so scary to me.
But you go on stages a lot, no?
But spoken poetry?
I loved rap music, and I would listen to like Eminem and all these rappers all my high school. And I was like, I want to be a rapper.
That would have been cool.
I loved it. And then I was like writing kind of rap, but not exactly rap, like a little bit more poetry in it. And I didn't realize it was poetry. And then I went on my book tour and I did my first talk, and it was to like middle schoolers. And I'm talking to them about bullying and no one is listening. They just do not care. And so I think to myself, maybe if I perform some like rap poetry for these middle schoolers, maybe they're going to listen. And I was 19. So I'm like, I'm not that far in age from them. So I literally stopped my talk and I just started performing rap poetry for them. I'm not even joking, about my bullying story. I was like, instead of just talking
Did you improvise?
No, I had written.
Oh, you had, okay.
Yeah, I had written it before just for fun. And I performed it and it went silent. And no one was like laughing or making fun of me. Instead, the craziest thing happened. I finished speaking and students start coming up to the stage asking for the microphone to share their story. It was wild. And the teachers told me they had never seen this before. Like they had never seen their students so engaged and open about painful things. And I started realizing poetry is this very unique vessel for communication. And that's why it's existed for centuries. It is something that opens your heart and allows people to communicate even if they don't speak the same language. And so it just took me in this whole other direction, and it's something that I love.
I can't believe you did that. That's insane. That is so cool.
It was fun. And then like 6 months later, I was performing that same poem at Madison Square Garden.
Okay, so tell me about that experience.
Yeah.
So what was the poem about? It was about bullying?
It was about bullying.
Okay.
And it was about my story. I take you from the time I was 8 years old until I was 19 when I wrote that poem. And it just became something that people loved hearing. And then Madison Square Garden reached out to me as part of another event that they were doing. And they said, do you want to take the stage and perform this? And I actually wound up performing there 3 years in a row. What? And it was crazy.
How many people?
18,000.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But actually, something I learned, and I'm curious what you just spoke at South by Southwest, right?
Yeah.
And how many people were there?
I have no idea. I
But
black out
a lot.
these things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But something I've noticed, when an audience is small, like 100 people, 50 people, it's a lot scarier than like 18,000 or probably what you spoke to at South by, right? Because it's much more personal.
Yeah.
When it's small.
And you also you pay attention to every kind of face.
Exactly.
You can, yeah.
But when you can't see faces.
Yeah, it's just a blur.
Yeah, it's just a blur. And you black out.
You black out.
Yeah.
Where's again, Aija, I don't think you understand. Maybe because it's so foreign to me, but like the level of confidence to, first of all, start rapping in front of middle schoolers, because kids are the scariest thing in the world to me. Yeah. Like, are you joking me? They're so honest. When I go pick up my kids from school, like if I see a girl looking at me the wrong way, I'm like, oh, what's wrong? Where? Like they scare me. So for you to just like bust out and like rap in front of them, that's mind blowing. But then doing it at Madison Square Garden, did you go do any like classes about public speaking or poetry?
No.
Nothing.
And I actually didn't speak for years because of my speech impediments. I like was mute for years. I would not talk unless I like absolutely had to.
So how did you like get over, or did it just feel like bigger than any of your fears?
What I learned really young was I was brutally bullied and I didn't even talk. I didn't do anything. I was just a regular kid and I was really quiet and I was attacked so much for that. So I think what I learned is like people are going to make fun of you and attack you and be mean no matter what. Every single person, someone will say something bad about. So if they're going to attack me for being silent, I might as well do whatever I want and say whatever I want. And I think that's what it was.
Wow. Wow. You speak a lot about like when you advocate, you talk about mental health, you talk about confidence,
Yeah.
resilience. Do you pull all of those things from your own experiences, or did at some point you started taking inspiration from other people's stories?
I think it started from my own experience and the mistakes I made. Like, I really, really regret going through all of those experiences as a kid and not speaking up and suffering with my mental health for years because of it. But then along the way, I would meet people. I'd meet the Holocaust survivors. I would meet other people in life that went through things that were so much harder.
Mm.
And I just realized that every single one of those people made the choice of life.
Mm-hmm.
And I was fascinated by how do you go through such terrible things and live with like a child's gaze, like live excited about the world still. And that's still something that like really fascinates me.
First of all, I want to ask a question regarding you being a child and you were struggling mentally. Like, I always think, obviously, as a parent, the kids don't come and talk to you. They don't
Yeah.
open up. To your point, you felt like if you would open up, it would make things worse. Looking back, do you think that there would have been a way for your parents to approach this where you would have opened up about it?
It's so tough. The one advice I give to parents when I speak to them, at like a school event or whatever, is you have to show your kid that you're on their team and they're not going to get in trouble no matter what, and that you will work with them to find a solution instead of taking control. Because the biggest thing when you're going through an experience like bullying is you have no control. So the last thing you want to do is have an adult that doesn't really know the situation come in and then move it in a different direction. So I think it's about being like, okay, let's sit down together. Let's come up with a game plan and let's solve this together. And I think that's how you create an open dialogue.
Another thing that I kind of getting from you, and I've read about it before because I'm sure there's enough studies, but when you become of service to someone, like for you, you went to, with the meals to the Holocaust survivors,
Yeah.
and you are able to, whatever darkness that you're in, when you come from a place of service and help other people, it's indirectly or
Yes.
directly taking you out of your own
Totally. Totally.
darkness, right?
Absolutely. And actually, I started the survivor deliveries when I was in a really tough point in my life as well. So I think you're absolutely right.
Like
Yeah,
redirecting that attention and that energy to help
exactly.
others. So I want to talk to you about you kind of went on this journey now to do videos about
Jews in diaspora.
and
Yeah.
diaspora. What
Yeah.
does diaspora mean?
It just means all around the
Like,
world outside of Israel.
how's that experience been for
It
you?
has been the greatest adventure. So I'm running two series right now, like consistent video series, which is one is aging around the world, where I meet with different aging and health and longevity companies all over. And then the other one is Jews. And so far I've gone to Tunisia, Azerbaijan, Mexico, Singapore, Mauritius, Colombia, all over. And I just go and I meet the people and I see the way they live and I make videos about this community that most people don't see. And it started with after October 7th, I was like, I need to do this series. I need to show people that not all Jews are Ashkenazi and that there's a shared history of persecution no matter where you go. And I booked a ticket to Tunisia. Jews came to Tunisia 3,000 years ago. They've never left. And they specifically live on an island off of Tunisia that they've never left this small island.
How many of them are there?
5,000 or so on the island
Wow.
still. Most of them left Tunisia because
Yeah.
of persecution, but they are the most fascinating, beautiful community. And I spent a week with them and it changed my life. And
Tell me how.
they look completely different than me, right? But we speak the same like historical language. Even though I don't speak Hebrew, we pray the same way. We share the same stories. Our cultures and traditions are very similar. Even though there's not one kosher market there, they find their own way to make things kosher. I'm not kosher. I'm not religious, but seeing the way that these people have adapted and remind me of my family, and our Shabbats are so similar, even though they're a different level of religion and they don't know an American Shabbat. It was just so shocking to me that I could walk into this home and see my family, even though we're so different.
Yeah. Wow.
And I realized that most of the world didn't know this, but also at the same time, I heard a lot of anti-Semitism from Tunisians that were not Jewish that clearly had never met or spoken to a Tunisian Jew. And I just saw the divide in one country. And it was really heartbreaking, but it was something I wanted to figure out. Can I change this? Can I like find a way to communicate to people that there's actually much more in common than there is that separates? So it was a very complicated but beautiful experience that just pushed me to go to more places and tell more stories.
There was once poem that you read
Yeah.
that I saw on your Instagram that was beautiful. That was more around women empowerment.
So I actually wrote that poem in September I was performing at the Forbes Power Women Summit in New York. And they wanted me to write an original poem about women and the state of women. And this poem is called I Wake to a Burning World. And I just was like, I had written like very feminist anthem poems before and I love them. But in this moment, in September 2024, I didn't feel that. I wanted to talk about how I felt like the world was on fire, but I also felt like women could save it, but I also didn't feel like we were there. I feel there's many divides between women still. And I wanted to call out and say, like, if we can find a way to build bridges together as women, I believe that we are the solution to a burning world.
That's really powerful because I think that up until now, we've been so accustomed to hearing feminism kind of with, the man versus the woman.
Yeah.
And it's only now slowly that I start seeing the conversation of the breakdown that we have with women, between women.
Exactly.
So what made you realize, like, what kind of experience did you have that you had that you were like, I want to open that conversation?
Some of the worst misogyny and hatred towards women I've ever seen has been from women to women. Not to say we have a lot of issues with men, of course, in the world, but
I'm totally agree with you.
Yeah.
And I think up until now, we just didn't really have the courage to sit down and have those kind of conversations.
Exactly. So I wanted to say something about that. And I've written about it in my second book. I think it's like a lot harder to tackle than that divide between men and women, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
Why do you feel like it's harder?
We are often inherently just extremely competitive with each other. When I look back at my experience with bullying, it was basically all from women. Whenever I get really brutal comments online, it's usually mostly all from women. And I don't know why we do this, but I think it's also easy to catch yourself saying these things about other women.
So that was my next question, because I know that I've rewired my brain with a lot of kind of beliefs that I didn't know I was carrying when I brought awareness to me doing them.
Really?
Yeah. So the same thing with, I realized last year, let's say, that I'm a very judgmental person, like super judgmental.
And where do you think that comes from?
I don't know if it's a survival mechanism or how I deal with the world, I think you want to protect yourself, so you just really analyze and judge everything. But it just became an unnecessary thing in my life.
Yeah.
So not only am I judgmental towards other people, but I'm extremely judgmental with myself. And that's usually the case, right?
Yes.
Whatever you put out there is usually what's going on inside.
Exactly.
So that was something that once I brought awareness, I was able to really, and still working through it.
Yeah.
But I wonder at what point, and do you feel like there is progress with women recognizing that we have a lot of stuff we have to go inwards that we're putting outwards,
That's a really good question. I think a few years ago we had progress. Like I actually think how these things work, they're just a pendulum. So when there was kind of that moment of Me Too, right, where there was a lot of division between men and women, then I think women really came together. But now that there is less of that division, maybe, or at least in the mainstream between men and women, then I think that there's more fragmentation between women. But I'm curious what your take is on that.
I agree with you. I think when there's a crisis, we come together. And in general, that's the power with women, by the way. But it's the day-to-day, the kind of in-between, when there is no one else to gang against or whatever, stand to, we create that divide within us. The poem was beautiful. I'm going to link it for sure because I want people to listen to it, because it was very, very powerful. Talk to me about the aging, because I know you you were just picked to do the Eisenhower. Like, tell me about this.
Wow, you've done your research. You're very good at this.
I know stuff.
When I graduated business school, I got this fellowship from the U.S. government called the Eisenhower Fellowship. Basically, they pick.
When you say I got, did you apply for it?
Yes, I applied for it.
Okay, so that's what I'm trying to get to, because all these things are just dropping
No,
on
no,
you.
no, they don't drop.
Okay.
Yeah, no, no. I had heard about this and I really wanted it, but I was below the age requirement.
Okay.
So I applied and I was just like, I don't think this is likely, but we'll see. And I wound up getting it. And basically, they send 10 Americans a year to countries overseas to tackle an issue that exists in the US by meeting with countries that are like experts at those issues. And then they do the same from other countries to the US. It's really, really cool.
Wow.
And my topic was aging and longevity because that's a whole other area I'm really passionate about. And it was
Is that a recent development, like a recent interest that you became obsessed
the
with?
last few years. My show actually that I sold was about this. The VC I worked at was a VC that invested in aging technologies. So it's like a side interest or like a side quest of mine. So they sent me to Korea and Japan and Singapore. I was there and then I started creating videos about like the really cool companies and the technology and the science that exists in these places in this space. And so now it's continued and I'm doing it all over and it's a lot of fun. I love it.
What are they trying to do? So you're there, they're sending you, you're learning about all these things,
Yeah.
and then what?
So the fellowship was started by President Eisenhower because he believed in soft power diplomacy, essentially like building bridges between people that would never meet and hoping that those bridges would be the future for kind of peace talks and development and relationships between countries. So I went to Japan, right? And I met an Eisenhower fellow who's 80 years old, who was an Eisenhower fellow a long time ago. And he became a fellow after the US bombed Japan. And I said to him, like, why would you want to work with the US after that? And he said, because of Eisenhower's mission. Eisenhower's mission was the only way we can build a better world is if we build together. And that's the whole idea behind this fellowship. So it was crazy. I was sat across from a man in my same program who's 80 now, who lives from the same belief system as President Eisenhower, I guess, did. The thing that I came away the most realizing is that the only way to really age successfully and healthfully is when elders are looked at with respect and they're integrated in society. And in the US, we have this issue where we really like discard people that are over like 60.
Yeah.
And we don't really hire them for jobs or we don't really consider them smart. And that is how decline happens mentally, physically, when you are no longer valued or seen as important.
I think that they definitely do a better job at that. Even thinking back to growing up in Israel, I feel like all the Russians had their grandmothers living with them.
Exactly.
Right? Like that's
amazing.
It's amazing. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's crazy how the more advanced or the more like the richer we get, it actually creates more of a divide.
Exactly.
And everyone is like, stop relying on each other and taking care of each other.
Totally. And then you probably have more respect for elders and you want to listen to them more and you care for them more because you grew up with that model instead of just not seeing older people anywhere.
I told Gary, my husband, that my mother will be moving in with us. He's very excited about it.
I love that.
But then when I said it, I was also like, wait, but she's like a year and a half older than my husband. So
oh my God, she's so young. How old is your mom?
My mom is, Gary's 53. My mom is 54.
Wow.
Yeah.
You have such a young mom.
55?
That's so cool.
She's so young. She
That's
had me very
amazing.
young. No, it was a whole other kind of experience to grow up together with your parents.
Was that like best friends in a sense?
It was best friends, but you know what? There were different kind of times when I didn't want a best friend. I wanted like a parent, and I have a lot of empathy for her, obviously, because she did the best that she could. But you know, when you're that young, and go through such extreme times with a child, it's very different.
Yeah.
So I had a very different experience, but it was great. I saw her in her, blooming, going through it. I always say I'm so thankful that I was raised by a mother that maybe because she was so young, she never deprioritized her own life. Like she always looked amazing. She always traveled and had friends, and we always had parties in our house. It was never like, I have a child, so I can't do that, you
Oh, I
know?
love that.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool. So I didn't grow up with a lot of rules, unlike you.
Oh, wow. It's very opposite.
Very opposite, yeah. I actually want to talk a little bit about you are in a new relationship,
Yes.
which is amazing. And I'm
Yeah.
only talking about it. I usually don't talk about people's relationship, but I'm only talking about it because it's a very special one. You are dating Nuseir, because I
Yes.
call it Nasir, but Nuseir is
Yeah.
name from Nas Daily. We're talking earlier. Gary said, like, this just makes sense. You both together just make sense. And I totally agree. I'm sure that the relationship also came with a lot of opinions
Yeah.
and a lot of judgment from people
Yeah.
because you guys both come from different backgrounds. Nuseir was born in Israel. He's an Arab Muslim Israeli.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're Jewish
American. Yeah.
Just also kind of the timing of it all.
Yes.
You guys kind of became a
Yeah.
poster child for I don't know what. So talk to me about it. Like, how did all of that come?
Well, we fell in love after October 7th. So it was definitely interesting timing. But it was actually that point of time that I think brought us together in a much deeper way. I never expected that when we met that we would be together now. I mean, we met as friends. We were friends for a few months and just getting to know each other. When October 7th happened, he was like the only person I really wanted to talk to about it. And we were just friends, but there was so much fear and anger and hysteria around the world, and it was justified, of course. That pain. When I spoke to Nuseir, he already was thinking about, okay, how can we rebuild? How can we figure out a way forward? How do we heal and how do we resolve? And he had this vision on October 9th. I was like really pulled in by that energy and that vision because I'm someone that I don't believe in being paralyzed by a moment. I believe in thinking like, okay, how can we go forward? How can we figure out a plan? In those conversations, I started to just learn more about the way that he viewed the world, the values he had and the dreams he had and aspirations. And I felt like I was listening to a slightly different version of myself. We have just such similar dreams and aspirations and beliefs. Through all of those conversations, wound up falling in love, but it was really out of nowhere. Like, this is the most surprising relationship of my life, but also the most beautiful one.
I love that. Did you had any reservations because of the
definitely.
differences?
Well, one, I did not want to date someone famous.
Well, that's honestly was my first question, because dating someone like high profile comes with its own set of problems.
I really did not want to. So that's part of why we were friends for so long. I really was keeping him at arm's length. He didn't live in New York or in the US. And so I was like, that's not going to work. We come from two very different religions. I was like, that's not going to work. Yeah, it took a long time. I was very, very hesitant. But I actually think it wound up making the relationship a lot more deeper because we didn't rush into dating. We were like friends. I was really trying to like suss the situation out. He was trying to understand me, and it took time. And I think that was actually a great gift in the end.
How does it work with both of you being online, sharing yourselves with the world?
I really did not want to actually have a public relationship. And then I kind of changed my mind and we decided to make a video about our relationship.
It went from let's not talk to make a specific video talking about
I
our
know.
relationship.
It was like really 180.
That's the way to do it.
But I think because it was something we scripted, we shot, it was produced, it was not daily life. It eased me into it. I feel more comfortable. I think vlogging for me would be really hard because I know we were just talking about how we're like private people. That would be a lot for me to show that on the internet, just my day-to-day life, our day-to-day life. But the way that it is now, where we have videos together sometimes and we do stories and things like that, has been really fun.
Like you have control over it.
Exactly.
You can figure it out.
Exactly.
I really, really loved the video that you both did. And I shared it a lot, actually, with a lot of people, where you sat down and obviously tackled the whole situation with Israel and Palestine. And you really broke it down to a very simple kind of question and answer, where you guys said, we are siding with those who want to build, who want to look in the future, who wants to create a new day and a new future for all of us. And at the end of the day, it really does come down to that.
Exactly.
Who are the builders and who are the destroyers? And I thought it was so powerful. Were you worried about the response to that video, or you just were kind of prepared for it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I assume with those things it's going to be bad. As long as I believe in the message, I'm fine saying it. I'm really not bothered that much by hate as long as I can tell you that I stand behind this message 100%.
Were you ever had times in your life where you put out a message out there and you didn't stand 100% behind it?
For sure, yeah.
And then
Yeah.
when people coming in, you know, that's one of my rules, by the way, that
Really?
I've learned from my own experience, where I will not share something online that I haven't come to a conclusion and decision on. Because once you are in this like shaky place and then you open up
Yes.
the whole thing to the world,
Exactly.
it's the scariest thing to do.
Exactly. I think like that's what people don't realize. Like if you believe in something and people tell you you're wrong and you're stupid, like if you believe in it, you can weather that. But it's the moments where you're not sure, and that is where I think other people's opinions can really get to you.
But that is the journey of like learning also to trust yourself.
Yeah.
Because I think for a long time, we go externally for the validation, for the opinions, for like, you tell me what I need to think so I can make up my mind.
How are you able to finally trust yourself, especially publicly sharing things? Because that's something I still struggle with.
If I'm being honest, that only started happening this year.
Really?
Yeah. And I'm 34. I also don't believe being 100% sure with what you're saying. Like, I will never be 100% sure about what I'm saying, about anything, because tomorrow something can come out and it's like proved wrong, right? So I'm always very wary about making statements or like, so I had to learn also the difference between an opinion and a statement, and also how to say it.
Yeah.
And it's two different things, and it takes time. But for me now, I feel like I feel more comfortable with sharing my opinions and being okay for people not to agree on it.
Yes.
But
What happened this year that was that turning point for you?
I have to tell you, we keep going back to it, but October 7th. I don't know. I think for every person, there's maybe some kind of like huge occurrence that happens in their lives. Obviously, it doesn't have to be a war, but it can be anything in your personal life where it makes you have to make a decision about who you are, where you stand, and what you believe in, and go out there and share it and talk about it. So that to me was my thing.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. So that was very special. Tell me about the future.
I want to focus fully on content. I have like goals for the kinds of content I want to make, the followers I want to get. And down the line, I would love to build my own company that is somehow related to aging and longevity, but not there yet. So,
ooh.
Yeah.
Okay, but you're planting seeds, you see? I love that.
Exactly.
Any books that you've read throughout your life that really like left you with a lesson?
The Choice changed my life, like by Edith Eger, and also Man's Search for Meaning.
Oh,
changed the way I look at the world.
I loved sitting down and chatting with you. I feel like I could do it for another 2 hours.
Honestly, same.
I know that you guys have things to do, places to be. Thank you so much for taking the time, but also just being so open.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
You make it so easy. You're so easy to talk to, and you're so inspiring and warm. And thank you for letting me sit with you today and chat with you. And
thank you. You're always welcome. I know we'll do this again,
totally.
So I'm not worried. Where do people can find you?
On Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, everywhere at just my name, Aija Mayrock.
I love it. I'm excited to see where the content goes.
Me too.
Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't miss my newest episode right here. And if you're listening to the podcast on Apple or Spotify, please go and leave a review with your biggest takeaway. I love reading your thoughts. They inspire me. So if you have any suggestions for guests or topics, you can leave them in the comment section. And always, always remember, you are not alone.